Welcome to the Stochastic MLB DFS Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Adam Scherer. You can find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And this show is sponsored by Underdog. If you haven't checked out Underdog, you really need to check out Underdog. We'll talk about Underdog a bit more later on, but loving all the new contests they're coming out with all the time. Really cool to see what they're doing over there. By the way, if you haven't done so, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also subscribe to our podcast channel. We're reviving the podcast channel a little bit, so make sure that if you haven't yet checked it out, you should subscribe and check out my high stakes podcast as well while you're on the podcast channel. Thank you to Underdog for sponsoring the show, and of course, if you don't know how to get into the Stochastic Hall of Fame, it's very easy. You can download the Stochastic avatar at stochastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet your win if you have Twitter to @StochasticHOF, or if you don't have Twitter, just email it, the screenshot to us, and you'll win a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. And of course, you're going to get that shout out from Lofty as well. So if you haven't yet done so, download that Stochastic avatar. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Better now that I have coffee.
Yeah, I've this is the rare morning show where I've already had 2 cups of coffee. I mean, we talked about a little bit. Yeah, we got some guesses on why we're running late, and there were, I guess, multiple reasons. Adam grabbing his coffee, but also I was pretty hungover this morning. I'm feeling better and better. Went out with our coworker Jay Curry last night, so still feeling the effects of that a little bit, but doing better after 2 cups of coffee, a lot of water, some Advil. And yes, dropping that deuce before the show also helped a little bit.
You can't drink with people 15 years younger than you, man.
Is Jake that young? Jake's not that young. I guess you're probably making an old joke about me, I guess.
I was rounding. I know Jake's young and I know you're old. I don't know exactly.
That is true. Probably at least 10 years. Probably.
I think I'm like 5 years older than Jake.
Okay. Yeah. So you're probably right in between us age wise. Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about, I think we're just going to talk about the main slate and the early slate. We're not going to talk about, there is a turbo slate as well, which I think we're going to skip over that 3-game turbo slate. We're just going to get into the early slate, which is 7 games at 4:05 Eastern, and then the main slate, which is 7:15 Eastern, which is 5 games. Of course, before we get into it, we should take a look at the Stochastic Sims tool. Let me pull that up. We can take a look at yesterday's contest. How did you do yesterday?
Not great. Not good. I don't remember anything specifically, but not good.
Yeah, I think I lost a little bit, which is, like a 90th percentile outcome. I think I lost like 5% or something. So I was pretty happy with not losing my hat entirely yesterday. I believe my single entry team was the when I was asked for it on the show last night was the Braves, which I wish that I had followed my own advice a little bit more. Although I don't think they ended up being the nuts. Like they had a couple players who did really well, but like ultimately, did the Orioles put up 14 runs?
No,
I know the Dodgers. They're 2. Oh,
the Rays put up a bunch.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know what the winning lineup ended up being. I know Matt Olson had 49 points. I know Riley had 30. Mookie had like 44.
Yeah. I guess I can pull up the post contest Sims tool. So the Sims tool, of course, we have both post contest Sims and pre contest Sims, which is the more exciting part of the product is the pre contest Sims, where you can simulate a bunch of lineups against each other to figure out which lineups do the best against each other. Very cool tool. But we'll check out this one as well. Should we check out the Mega Minimax? What do you think is the most exciting one to look? I guess the relay throw. We could look at the usual one.
Well, I know I have a positive Sims ROI in the relay throw, so I like that one.
All right, we'll do the relay throw then.
I haven't looked at the other one.
All right, I did not play the relay throw. I just played the. I'm liking these new like smaller buy-in like large field contests. I'm always a huge fan of those.
Yeah, I like that. I like those too.
Which I know I think Greg was kind of instrumental in doing that. Like he actually messaged his VIP rep. His VIP rep right away was like, "Yeah, maybe I'll bring it up." The idea of doing some more of these, and they've done it the past few days. So that's very cool to see.
Don't give. I had more to do with it than Greg did.
Oh, did you? Go on.
I'll tell you later.
All right. All right. Well, then I'm not going to give Greg credit. All right. So our highest simulated ROI lineup here. Mr. CSE 13. I don't know how you pronounce this name. Mr. CSE 13. 250% simulated ROI on this lineup. Looking very good there. John Gray, Luis Medina. What's the looks like he had a Cardinals, and does he have secondary stack here? No, just Cardinal stack with one-offs, looks like. That was our top simulated ROI. I say Jay Blake the King, of course, up there as he frequently is. But we can look at who had the most actual fantasy points here. Man, 222 fantasy points in the winning lineup. That's a big score there. Michael Soroka and Luis Medina really were the winning pitchers. So because I was hanging out with Jake, I was not paying much attention to a lot of the slate. I did not realize it ended up being Soroka and Medina as the pitchers you needed. But okay, it was a Brave stack that won the whole thing. So that's
yeah,
good.
I mean, they weren't the best pitchers. I think they just kind of happened to be in this lineup.
Okay. Pablo Lopez in the second lineup. That's fun to see. I don't even remember how the Twins did yesterday. I'm assuming they got the win. Okay.
They won like 8-1. Yeah, my only promising lineup yesterday, like it had Olsen, Acuna, and Albies. So like 49 from Olsen, 32 from Acuna, and then a 5-man Minnesota stack. They scored like 8 runs in the first 3 innings and then didn't score again the rest of the game.
Oh, that's always the worst. I had that with the White Sox a few days ago where I was just like, had all the White Sox and like I wasn't paying attention until the 7th inning or so. And then I saw I was in third actually on an underdog. I did an underdog, just one draft of the late slate there. And I was in third place and had like all the player innings remaining. And then at that point, all of my White Sox sucked the rest of the game. Like I was watching at that point and they never got any hits. So it was very frustrating.
Yeah, like I had no idea this lineup existed. And I'm like, oh shit, this lineup is really good. Like it had both pitchers to go and the Twins in like the 3rd or 4th inning. The pitching immediately goes negative. The Twins stopped scoring. Griffin Canning ended up coming back and having a good game, but it didn't matter because the Twins stopped scoring.
Yeah, always frustrating. All right, so I think we'll start with the early slate here. We're just going to do the early and the main. If anybody has questions about the turbo slate, we can hit on like individual questions, but we're not going to go through it game by game there. We're going to start with this early slate. And the first game on the early slate is Houston at Texas. Hunter Brown on the mound for the Astros. Nathan Eovaldi for the Rangers. Any interest in the pitchers, Adam?
So definitely a tough matchup here for both sides to some extent, but in particular for Hunter Brown. He's a really good pitcher coming in at 9,300, but also facing one of the best offenses in baseball. Trying to get the correct top pitchers tool pulled up. There we go. So we have Brown 5th in top 2 pitcher percentage at 17%, pulling 12% ownership. This slate is quite a bit different from yesterday. This slate, I guess, is why we didn't have any good pitchers yesterday because they are all pitching today, it appears. So that makes it, again, it's a really good pitcher in Brown, but a tough matchup. And you can be a little bit more discerning in who you're taking pitchers against when half the slate is number 1 starters, essentially. So Brown looks fine in tournaments. He is getting quite a bit less ownership than like Zach Wheeler, who's $200 less. Wheeler's facing the Nats, though, not facing the Rangers. So that's why you see the gap. But in terms of actual talent, really good. 27.5% K percentage, 3.13 xFIP for Brown. On the other side, you have Eovaldi at 9,500. So his salary's come back down. We had seen him flirting with like 11K recently. So that's good to see. Not a great strikeout matchup with the Astros. Not an easy matchup in general because the top of this order is so good, but it does drop off a bit towards the bottom. They are still missing Yordan Alvarez. Only a 3.7 implied run total. Eovaldi is just ahead of Hunter Brown with an 18% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 14% projected ownership. So these guys are similar in that I think you're basically using them as ways to be somewhat contrarian in tournaments. They're not unowned, but they are getting less ownership than several other pitchers. So they're guys where, if you do have a little bit more popular stacks, you can go to them. And yeah, it's not an ideal matchup. You have Cease against Oakland. You have Wheeler, as I mentioned, against Washington. It's not that level of matchup, but they are still really good pitchers and you are getting an ownership discount.
Okay. What about the bats in this one? I mean, tough spot for the bats too. How are you feeling about them?
Yeah, pretty tough to get to bats here. I think you can always make the case for Texas just based on how good they are, but this isn't even a spot where you have a lot that stands out that you can target. Hunter Brown against lefties this year, striking them out 29% of the time, 142 expected ISO, expected WOBA just shy of 300, expected WOBA to righties also just shy of 300 with a 106 expected ISO. So it's purely, hey, the Rangers have a ton of really good hitters. Maybe they'll do well, more so than, you can't even really look at Brown and say like, oh, well, he does struggle with left-handed power or right-handed power because he doesn't. We have Texas 5th from the bottom with a 6% chance of being the top stack. Houston right behind them at 5%. They're getting 4 to 6% ownership, 4% to Texas, 6% to Houston. As far as Eovaldi goes, 145 expected ISO to lefties, 144 to righties. He's also just very good. So yeah, there's nothing that stands out individually. There is talent in these bats, but there's nothing matchup wise that stands out.
Okay. And how would you rank the four sides of the game?
Evaldi, Brown, Rangers, Astros.
All right. So pitchers first. All right. Next up. Ooh. We've got my Twins against your Orioles. I did not even realize that. Bailey Ober on the mound for the Twins, Kyle Bradish for the Orioles. Any interest in the pitchers?
Yeah, I don't know why Kyle Bradish is $5,800 against this shitty team that strikes out all the time. He's fine. Like, he's not a bad pitcher. Minnesota is above average offensively against righties, 108 WRC plus. You do get these lefties that can take advantage of hitting in Camden Yards, but their active roster has a 28% strikeout percentage this year. It's the pricing is just really weird. Like, we got Dean Kramer at 8,100 yesterday in this same matchup. Now you have Bradish at 5,800. They're comparable pitchers, and I think you could make a case that Bradish might actually be better. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. 22.6% K percentage this year, 3.96 xFIP. Bradish looks like a good value option. He is getting ownership, pulling 21.5% on DraftKings, but it's backed up in the top pitchers tool as well. 13% chance of being a top two pitcher. So it's not even like, he's extremely unlikely to be a top two scorer. It's certainly in his range of outcomes, but a 30% chance of being a top two value. This is just a mispricing on Bradish.
No interest in Ober?
I think Ober is fine. 7,700. He has had some power issues, mostly with righties. Also has a higher strikeout percentage against righties, which makes sense. You typically would expect that. Right now, he is getting 1% ownership. I don't hate it in the sense of like, he's an okay pitcher getting 1% ownership, but park downgrade for him. You're going to get a lot of left-handed bats here. As I mentioned, he has held lefties to a 139 expected ISO this year, but this is one of the better parks for left-handed power. He's only striking them out about 20% of the time. You're very likely to have 6 lefties in the top 7. The projected lineup I'm looking at has Mullins, Rutschman, Santander, O'Hearn, Henderson, and Hicks all in the top 7. The only righty in there is Hayes, who's been one of the best hitters in the American League this year, or really in baseball. So it's a very tough spot, and I think he's more difficult to get to.
Arnold Lane says you're a poet and don't even know it. To me, I don't even know what I said. TTID asks Bradish 7.8K on FanDuel. Do you think he's okay on FanDuel at 7.8K?
He's okay, but he's much, much different than DraftKings. So he's getting 8% ownership there, 6% chance of being the top scoring pitcher. The obvious difference is that it's not even the price thing. It's that you can only roster one. So if you roster him, by definition, you're not getting to these other really good pitchers on the slate. But he's still certainly playable in tournaments in the sense that he is cheaper than pretty much anybody else you would go to. And it gives you a different roster construction, but much, much better play, much more useful play on DraftKings.
Maybe it's because I responded to Pass the Jello. I responded Joey Gallo. So it looks like Joey Gallo passed the Jello.
Yeah,
almost.
got it. Yeah.
Maybe that's okay. How about the bats in this Twins Orioles game? Any interest?
Yeah, the Baltimore side in particular, 4.8 implied run total. Like I already mentioned, Ober doesn't strike lefties out at a high clip. He doesn't give up a lot of power to them, though. But we have Baltimore 4th in top stack percentage, 8% top stack percentage, 7.5% projected ownership. So they look pretty good. In terms of stack score, they're middle of the pack because they are relatively expensive. But there are typically going to be bats in here you can use as value. Rutschman's expensive if he plays. This is a 4:00 game after they played last night, so don't know if he'll be in the lineup. But assuming Rutschman plays, he's expensive. Mullins, 4,800. Santander, 4,500. Gunnar Henderson, 4,600. But Ryan O'Hearn's 34. Hayes is less than 4K. Hicks is less than 3K. Westberg's still cheap. I assume he'll be back in the lineup today after sitting yesterday. He's off to a solid start through his first few major league games. So it's just a deep lineup with a lot of talent. There's a lot of ways you can stack it.
Yeah, who is this Westberg kid? Is he a big prospect?
Yeah, I want to say the Orioles' second or third prospect. Yeah, I think he's behind Holiday, he's behind Cowser, and then it's Westberg, I'm pretty sure. But he's still like top 25, top 30 in baseball, probably.
Okay, so he'd be the number one prospect for most teams, just not the Baltimore. Okay. How would you rank the 4 sides of this game?
Bradish, Baltimore, Minnesota, Ober.
Figures. I'm going Minnesota first. I'm going to rank this one. I'm going to go Minnesota, Ober, Bradish, Baltimore. All right.
Westberg is third behind Holiday and Cowser. Overall, he is 32nd.
Okay. I actually think that I will. I mean, I was joking when I said that, but I actually think that I will have some interest in the Twins if Bradish is going to get crazy ownership. Like there might be a leverage case to be made there.
Yeah, I mean, I like So what I like about the Twins here, Bradish is fine, but it's not like he's, an ace or anything. 147 expected ISO to lefties, 324 expected WOBA, but he's just normal, 23.5% K percentage. But this park just plays up left-handed power. So you get Julian, Kirilloff, Kepler, Gallo, all from the left side. They all just naturally have really high ceilings here, and they're really cheap. The most expensive guy out of those four is Gallo at 3,500. And then you have Correa, Buxton, Lewis, where they have plenty of power. They have plenty of stolen base upside. The park kills right-handed power. Bradish has had right-handed power issues. 197 expected ISO, 148 actual ISO. The actual ISO probably has a lot to do with pitching in this park, but they're just so good that the upside is certainly there. And one other thing to keep an eye on, stolen bases in general are up this year. Rutschman has really been having trouble throwing guys out. I don't know if it's a pitching staff thing. I don't know if it's a Rutschman thing. I don't know if it's a combination of both, but teams have been able to run on Baltimore.
All right. So there's a case to be made for the Twins, even if they are a third of your four.
Yeah, I think this is just a pretty appealing game to get to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next up, we have Washington at Philly. Mackenzie Gore on the mound for the Nationals. Zach Wheeler for the Phillies. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Yeah, both of them. Gore 9,100, good matchup against Washington. We know it's not a good strikeout matchup, but they're one of the worst offenses against right-handed pitching in terms of production. Active roster has a 90 WRC plus, only an 18.8% strikeout percentage, but it's not like we're paying a premium for Wheeler. He's only 9,100, typically can work pretty deep in the games. 26.8% K percentage this year, 3.66 xFIP. He is pulling the most ownership of the pay-up options on DraftKings. He's at 36, that of the 9K plus guys, he's getting the most ownership at 36%, second most ownership on the slate behind Cease against Oakland. So he's going to look good. On the other side, Mackenzie more just a tournament play, but there is low owned upside here for a $7,500 pitcher. Now it's a scary spot. It's in Philadelphia. The Phillies have a 5.1 implied run total, but Mackenzie Gore has a 28.5% strikeout percentage this year. That's higher than Cease. It's higher than Brown. It's higher than Wheeler. I'm not sure if they're on this slate or the next one. So Yuri Perez is on this slate. Tyler Glasnow is not. But the only pitchers pitching today, period, that have a higher strikeout percentage than Gore this year are Tyler Glasnow and Yuri Perez. So the upside's clearly there. 3.58 xFIP. It's not even like this is somebody that strikes guys out, but other than that gets lit up. He's a good pitcher. It's a scary spot, but he is $7,500 getting 6% ownership, and he has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate. This is sort of similar to the spot with Paxton yesterday where, he doesn't project great because the matchup is tough, but that massive ceiling is there at low ownership. We saw Paxton hit his against Toronto. It's a pretty interesting tournament play.
Very interesting. But then the Phillies have a 5-run implied total. That doesn't scare you? I mean,
it does. It's weird. So Gore has had some power issues this year. 177 expected ISO to righties, 209 to lefties. Obviously, the Phillies do have a couple of very good lefties in Schwarber and Harper. And then you're going to get a bunch of right-handed power, Turner, Castellanos, Realmuto, Alec Boehm in particular. So it is a very, very scary spot. It's just that he's kind of priced for it. Like if you were just pricing Mackenzie Gore off of strikeout ability and overall pitching ability to limit runs, if you're just going off of his strikeout percentage and his xFIP, this is like a 9K, $9,500 pitcher in a neutral matchup. So 7,500 is basically covering for the fact that the Phillies have a 5.1 implied run total.
Right. Okay. Jeremiah says definitely going to have a few Washington stacks today. They lit up Wheeler last meeting. He faced them and he can get lit up from time to time. He can. Do you have any interest in Washington or the Phillies here?
More so in the Phillies. I just made all the cases for why I think Gore is a high upside tournament play, but they still have a 5.1 implied run total, good hitting weather, good park, tons of power. If you're only going to one side, or if you're looking at this as like which side is more likely to succeed, the Phillies look pretty good. As far as the Nats go, they're cheap, but it's really tough to make a case against Zach Wheeler on this slate.
Okay. Steven just reminded me to check the weather. It doesn't look like any huge weather concerns in any of these games, but apparently winds blowing out in Philly. Yeah. Interesting. How would you rank the four sides of this Phillies Nationals game?
Wheeler, Phillies, Gore, Nats.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have Milwaukee at Pittsburgh. Corbin Burns on the mound for the Brewers. Johan Oviedo for the Pirates. Any interest in the pitchers?
Yeah, Burns looks pretty solid here. Nice park shift for him. 3.7 implied run total for the Pirates. Burns is 6th in top 2 pitcher percentage at 17%. He's pulling about 18% ownership. So it is kind of interesting that he's getting more ownership than Brown and Eovaldi, even though we have him projected a little bit like barely behind them, but at a cheaper price tag. So kind of interesting that, he is getting more ownership when they're projected slightly ahead of him and not that different in price. But it is a good spot for him. He's a good pitcher. We've seen some struggles from him overall this year, but still a 22.6% K percentage, 4.2 xFIP, probably ends up with better numbers than that by the end of the year. So a lot of good pitching on this slate. He's certainly one of them.
All right. How about the bats here?
Not a ton. Oviedo at 6K, like not somebody I'm probably going to roster too much in DFS, although he does have a good strikeout matchup. But this is a park that kills power. It's a big park downgrade for Milwaukee bats in terms of home run upside. 149 expected ISO to lefties for Oviedo, 128 to righties. So it's not like you're looking at a pitcher that is particularly prone to giving up home runs. The Brewers are cheap. I think that's the biggest selling point on them. Even Christian Yelich is only $4,200, and he's the most expensive player on DraftKings in their projected lineup. So you can stack this team for cheap, get good pitching, get good one-offs. That gives you a very high ceiling, but not a great park, not a team that I love getting to. In terms of stack score, they're second because they are so cheap. In terms of top stack percentage, they are 5th at 8%. So everything considered, they look like a pretty good stack, but it's not one of those spots where I'm looking at it saying like, oh, I love this park. I love the matchup. I don't love any of it. I just really like the pricing.
Okay. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Either Burns or Brewers, then the other one, then probably Oviedo, then the Pirates.
All right. We'll do one more game here before doing a read. Next up, we have Chicago at Oakland. Dylan Cease on the mound for the White Sox. James Caprillion for the A's. Any interest in the pitchers, Adam?
So I didn't even hear the first one you said. I heard Caprillion, and I can tell you the answer to that is no. On the other side, we have Dylan Cease. And yeah, he's projected to be the most popular pitcher on the slate. I don't know what happened with his price on DraftKings, but it's been broken for a while. We had several starts where it was like, all right, well, Dylan Cease is a really interesting tournament play because he's like 7,700. Yes, he's facing the Dodgers or whatever scary offenses he was facing, but you're talking about someone with great strikeout stuff. It's very likely to increase as the year goes on after you got off to a little bit of a slow start. So we'd had a couple of starts where it was sort of like we were talking about with Mackenzie Gore today, where it's like, well, this is dangerous, but he's a really good pitcher. Now you just have him at this price point in like as good a matchup as you can get in a good pitcher's park. He has the 3rd highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 27.8%. The only pitchers ahead of him are Perez and Gore. 3.9 xFIP, about a 10% walk percentage, a little higher than you would like, but nothing crazy there. And you've seen his strikeout numbers trending up, and it's likely they continue to do so. He's somebody that typically strikes out 30+% of hitters. So you're still kind of just getting back to where he normally comes in at. And now you just get this great matchup against Oakland. Good pitcher's park, 3.6 implied run total for the A's. Cease, everything considered, to me, pretty clearly looks like the best pitcher because you could make the case that he's the most talented anyway, and then he's 8K in this matchup.
Right. So the best pitcher on the slate?
I think so, yeah.
About playing any of the bats in this game?
Probably not too much. I think you can get to the White Sox. They are 1st in top stack percentage. They're 1st in stack score right now. They do have a 5.4 implied run total. It's just I hate going to this park, but it does make sense. Kyle Muller is back. He struggled so far this year. I thought coming in, like I was impressed with him at least somewhat based on his time in Atlanta. But so far this year, only striking out 15.5% of righties, 257 expected ISO, 426 expected WOBA. Lefties have been really good against him as well. It's a somewhat limited sample, but he has gotten lit up. So I get it with the White Sox. I guess I probably will end up getting there just because they do project so well and they are cheap. But I absolutely hate taking bats in this park.
Yeah, really, really tough park, but really great matchup with James Caprillion. Hard to argue with that.
Wait, yeah, I'm seeing Kyle Muller.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Am I in the wrong?
I mean, they're both. The answer doesn't change too much, except for they do look better if it's Muller.
Yeah, so I'm seeing that in the top pitchers tool, and I'm seeing Caprillion in. I'm going to refresh my fantasy cruncher. Maybe it has changed. Interesting.
DraftKings has Muller as probable.
All right, so I'm guessing it is Muller then. All right, so do you want to would you have any interest in Muller, and how much does that change things for you?
And Caprilion's on the injured list. No, I don't really have interest in Mueller. I mean, he's 5K, so I think everybody at this point knows how I feel about 5K starting pitchers. Like they're
Yeah.
always playable, but no, I mean you're getting a ton of right-handed bats here. There's a good chance that like Benintendi is the only lefty in this lineup. They have power. I'm not looking to get the Mueller. Louis and individually for the White Sox, Luis Robert looks fantastic. Jimenez, Vaughn, Berger all look really good, and then round out the stacks however you want.
All right. How would you rank the four sides of the game?
White Sox 1, Cease 1, White Sox 2, Mueller 3, A's 4.
All right. All right. Let's talk briefly about our sponsor, Underdog. Loving this new. If you haven't checked out Adam, have you checked out the weekly winners contest yet?
I mean, I know what it is. I haven't drafted any yet.
Okay. It's I've only
like
drafted. I've drafted once. I think that I've determined that I need to do it in a slow draft because it's totally unique. It's way different from other like regular best ball. So I think that I need to like give it a lot more thought. But if you haven't checked it out, I think it's going to be really cool. It's rather than paying out a season long, there is no season long prize, but every week they pay out the top place $20,000, second place $10,000. Really flat payout structure too, which I kind of love. 20, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So like a lot of the top prizes you can win real money. But then
I think
they pay out.
strategy is really interesting too.
I think it is too. So I already did a strategy video on what I think the best approach is, but like I think we're all going to be kind of learning as we go. My approach that I suggested in my video is like I'm only taking one quarterback and then focusing and like trying to stack my quarterback and then focusing on some individual weeks. So like trying to take the teams that are going to be in the best spots for like just in week 4, just in week 6 or whatever, and like trying to find like isolate a couple spots there. I don't know if that's the best approach, but
No, I think that approach makes sense. A couple I've seen thrown around on Twitter that I've really liked are the idea of stacking your bye weeks if you can. That's something where like I don't think you should go out of your way to do it necessarily. Like I don't want to take some shitty player just because I already have a bunch of week 5 bye guys. But
right.
like as a tiebreaker type thing, I think that makes some sense. Just punt that week, but have maximum players every other week. Also, I saw somebody mention, I think it might have been Herzig, but I'm not sure. A like true zero running back strategy, which I
Right.
thought was really interesting, where you're essentially just not going to win the first few weeks, but you're putting yourself in the position where in the second half of the season you could just have absolutely loaded lineups every single week.
Yep. No, I think that could work. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just like there's so many different strategies you can try. Yeah, I agree with your assessment of the bye week thing. I think that was also Herzig suggested stacking buys. And I'm like, it's fine, but I
That
don't
would make
think
sense.
that
I think he's the only best ball bro I follow on Twitter. So that and everything I say might be Herzig.
I'm pretty sure you follow Eric Beimfohr.
Oh
I
yeah,
call him
yeah.
the best ball.
It's either Herzig or Eric. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I saw Herzig. I'm not sure. Like I agree with your assessment of like that. I agree. Like it's certainly not a negative to have to stack your buys, but just not something that I'm going crazy out of my way
I
for.
kind of view it like week 17 stacking and
Exactly. Like it's like yeah, it's good if you can do it, but like not a huge priority for me. Guys, I put the link into chat. I pinned it to the top of chat. So if you have not checked out Underdog, use that link. You're going to get your first deposit doubled up to $100 when you use that link in the description. You have to be 18 plus to play, 21 plus in Massachusetts or Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama or Nebraska. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But yeah, check out Underdog if you haven't already. They have everything you could possibly want. They got the pick'em contests. They've got fantasy. They actually have daily fantasy, and it's not like DraftKings and other sites where you have a salary cap. They have drafts for contests every single day. They got the pick'em prop. They got the best ball. They're innovating these new contests all the time with this weekly winners one that I'm honestly pretty excited about. So check out Underdog if you haven't already, and yeah, take advantage of that first deposit match offer because you can, put $100 in, get another $100. You have 8 entries into Best Ball Mania, then for shooting for up to $4 million if you win both, but really shooting for $3 million. So a lot of cool contests on Underdog. You should check it out if you have not already. All right, we should continue on to the next game. We got Justin Verlander. We got San Francisco at the Mets. Anthony DeSclafani on the mound for the Giants. Justin Verlander for the Mets. What's your level of interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Definitely interested in Verlander here. A little surprised he's projected to be the third highest owned pitcher on the slate. Not saying I'm surprised like at the projection as if I think the projection's wrong, but just kind of surprised that's what the field, how the field I guess sees it. But either way, he's a good play. You have a Giants lineup that strikes out quite a bit. You have a pitcher's park in New York. You have The Giants still, I think, expected to miss Yastrzemski and Conforto. Not sure if one or both are officially on the injured list, but I know they're banged up. They left games early recently. They're not in the projected lineup I'm looking at. So you're getting a watered down lineup. You're getting a team that strikes out a lot. You're getting a good pitcher's park. You're getting a very reasonable price tag at 8,300. The only real question is, what are you getting from Justin Verlander? Because he's only struck out 20.5% of hitters this year, 4.3 xFIP. Those are fine, like adequate numbers, but that's not Justin Verlander. That's not what you're looking for when you roster him. But I've talked about it quite a bit with him this year. He's had a pretty tough string of strikeout matchups. He's also obviously older, but I still expect him to finish up with a strikeout percentage around 25, 26%, just based on what he's done in the past and how projection systems view him. And going through, his schedule this year, he had a good strikeout matchup with Detroit to open the season. He got 5 strikeouts. He picked up 7 against Cincy. Then he runs into Tampa, Cleveland, the Rockies in Colorado, Toronto, the Braves in Atlanta, the Yankees, Houston in Houston, Milwaukee last time out, a good strikeout matchup. But the schedule certainly hasn't done him any favors, and he does have an above average strikeout matchup here. So I think he's a good play. I do think that if you wanted to turn some of 30% Verlander into 18% owned Burns or $9,300, 12% owned Hunter Brown, those kind of pivots make sense, or go down a little bit, turn some of 30% Verlander into 6% Gore in your lineups where you have more popular bats. All of that stuff makes sense. There's plenty of pivots around him, but he does project as one of the best mid-range, one of the best options overall, basically just coming in behind Cease when you factor in salary and matchup.
All right. Somebody in chat just said happy Bobby Bonilla. Beezy says happy Bobby Bonilla day. So I'm just reading. I saw this earlier. Want to check out the stats for the 13th consecutive year. The Mets are going to pay Bobby Bonilla $1.2 million. I have no idea how long this goes. Do you know how long this contract goes for with Bobby Bonilla?
No, it's like forever. I think the Orioles were paying him for a while too. They might be done.
Oh yeah, somebody else responded. Let's also not forget that the Baltimore Orioles are also on the hook for $500,000 on Bobby Bonilla Day. So every July 1st, he'll collect a total of basically 1.7 million total from the Mets and Orioles. Man, that was sharp.
Through 2035.
Good on him. He's 6 years old, so he's going to be 72 by the time this contract ends. Man, that's I mean, most of us can't do that. Like we can't put off our salary for several decades, but if you can, that seems like specific, particularly for professional athletes, where like they historically, a lot of young professional athletes don't spend their money wisely. Like that's a great approach to just do it, extend it over decades. Love it.
I wonder why he didn't get it, or if he did, but inflation adjusted.
Yeah, I have no idea if he did. I would guess not, but
I mean, the way it's worded, I'm guessing he didn't, because it says he'll collect a check for 1,100,000 whatever, like every year through 2035. Obviously, that was a lot better for him 10 years ago, and it's going to be a lot worse 10 years from now.
Right. True. Congrats to Bobby. All right. How about the bats in this San Francisco New York game? Any interest there?
Matthew Stilla said, did the team think the MLB was going under or what? No, it was just to defer his salary and open up cap room, or not cap room, but because there's no cap, but just open free up salary. Like they have, I mean, $1 million a year for the Mets is a rounding error.
Right. Yeah, true. It's not a ton of money for them. Probably made sense for both. I'm surprised more players don't do it. Like players and teams don't like set it up that way.
Yeah. Chris Davis is getting paid for a while now.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Chris CH or Chris KH?
The Orioles won CH.
Okay.
Because it was basically like, look, I can't hit anymore. And the Orioles are like, we know you can't hit anymore. But I'm still under contract for 5 years at like $30 million a year or whatever. And it was like, okay, well, how about we pay you? I don't remember the exact amount, but how about we pay you a few million for the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's pretty nice. All right. What's your level of interest in Giants or Mets bats?
Not too much in the bats. Desclafani's not a bad pitcher. It's not a good park for hitting. He does typically struggle more with lefties than righties, which sets up reasonably well for the Mets. So far this season, only striking out 14.5% of lefties, 187 expected ISO. So I think if you're looking for individual Mets, you're looking at Nimmo and Lindor as the main pieces, but 4.6 implied run total. They're coming in middle of the pack in terms of top stack percentage, but they're not exactly cheap either. So they're they're one of those teams that, like, if you're playing 150 lineups, you're probably stacking a little bit. If you're playing 20 lineups or 10 lineups, you're probably not.
Okay. How would you rank the four sides?
Verlander, Mets, Stefani, just because he's 5,500, and then the Giants.
Okay. Steven says there was something about 8% interest on his money at the time. Also, Bogarts has a deferred salary feature now, but MLB teams do not do interest on it anymore. Okay. Dan says Bobby Bonilla lives in Sarasota, where he lives, and there is a bar that has a 119 pint special today in honor of the 119 mil. That's pretty awesome. I wonder if I'm guessing he doesn't show up to that bar, but it'd be cool if he did. Just like gets. I mean, probably he doesn't need the cheap beers, but still, just for the fun of it, that'd be cool.
And regarding the Bogarts contract, that's kind of a move that teams started doing recently. There were several contracts this offseason where, like, you saw the numbers and it was like they signed these guys until they're 45, paying them like, $30 million a year. But it's essentially just a way of getting around the luxury tax and what you're paying annually.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on. The next game, final game actually of the early slate, is Miami at Atlanta. Uri Perez on the mound for Miami. Charlie Morton for the Braves. Any interest in the pitchers, Adam?
Perez 8,500. Tough matchup though, and in Atlanta, so that makes it pretty difficult to get to him, even though he is good. You could make a similar case for him as far as upside that you can for Gore, but I expect Miami to be a little bit more cautious with him as well. At that price tag in Atlanta, I think he's really tough to get to. On the other side, you have Morton in a decent spot against Miami, 16% ownership at 8,900, 21% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So we actually have him going a little bit under owned relative to somebody like Verlander. Verlander's $600 less, but we actually have Morton like 1.3 times as likely to be a top 2 scoring pitcher at essentially half the ownership. So that seems like an interesting tournament spot if you can find that $600 for flat implied run total for Miami. Morton is good enough. 26% strikeout percentage, 3.92 xFIP. I do like Morton a decent amount.
Okay.
It is 95 degrees in Atlanta also.
Wow. Okay. That'll help. It'll help the bats. Any interest in the bats?
Yeah, it's the Braves. It's not a great matchup. I mean, Uri Perez is one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, but in his limited time in the majors so far, he has allowed a 197 expected ISO to righties, only a 286 expected WOBA. So it just looks like a case of he's really, really hard to hit, but occasionally probably misses, either hangs his slider a little too often or, misses location with his fastball and can give up some power. 29% K percentage to both sides of the plate. It's certainly not a matchup you're looking at and saying like, oh, I really like this, but you still have a 5-run implied total because the Braves are just so good and the hitting weather looks very good as well. On the Miami side, clearly not as interesting as the Braves. They do have Chisholm back, which is nice. The bottom of their order is essentially free. So you get a nice park upgrade. You get, good hitting weather. We have them middle of the pack in top stack percentage. We have them middle of the pack in ownership. So, they look decent, more so as, value pieces plus Chisholm probably.
How would you rank the four sides of the game?
Morton, Braves, Marlins, Perez.
All right. We have made it to the end of the early slate. Adam, who are your 3 favorite stacks on the early slate?
White Sox, even though I hate the park. Orioles. But it's between Atlanta and Milwaukee. Probably Milwaukee just because of the value component.
All right. 3 favorite pitchers on this early slate?
Cease, Wheeler, Bradish.
And home run.
And again, for value reasons on Bradish.
Okay. Who is your home run pick today on this slate?
There's a lot of good pitching today. Luis Robert.
I already gave my home run pick. I'm thinking like, should I have done a different? I did Joey Gallo. Yeah,
Gallo's a good one.
Yeah. Looks like a good spot for Gallo. I was trying to think if should I do somebody earlier in the batting order, but I think Gallo's still probably the best bet there. So I'm going to go with it. All right, we'll move on to the main slate. It's 5 games, starts at 7:15 Eastern. Let me pull up what the games are. Okay, first game on this main slate, Cleveland at Chicago. Tanner Bybee on the mound for the Guardians. Marcus Stroman for the Cubs. Any interest in the pitchers, Adam?
8,400 for Bybee, 9,800 for Stroman. That's a hell of a price tag for Stroman. They are both getting some ownership. Bybee getting 24%, Stroman getting 11, 27% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher for Bybee, 25% for Stroman. Stroman's a good pitcher. He just doesn't have the strikeout stuff to warrant a $9,800 price tag. 20.8% K percentage so far this year, and that strikeout percentage drops quite a bit when you talk about lefties specifically. 23.5% to righties, 18.5% to lefties. Cleveland's one of the most difficult teams in the league to strike out, and they are going to have a left-handed heavy lineup as well. So Stroman gives you, 7-8 inning shutout, 5 strikeout type upside, and on a short slate, that's fine. So he is getting some ownership. He's a decent play, but you're definitely paying more than you normally would or should for Stroman. For Bybee at 8,400, he does have solid strikeout stuff. 22.9% K rate, 4.5 xFIP. Cubs have a 4.2 implied run total. So he's, for lack of a better word, riskier than Stroman, but he is also a lot less expensive. He offers better strikeout stuff. So definitely interested in both pitchers.
All right. How about the bats?
Not too much interest there. Don't have wind blowing out in Wrigley. So implied run totals are low. Game only has an 8-run total. There's not a lot to target, I don't think. Stroman doesn't really give up power. 101 expected ISO to lefties, 110 to righties. On the other side, Bybee 169 to righties, 114 to lefties. There's nothing that really stands out. The Cubs are pretty cheap, so you have that. Tauchman probably leading off at 2,500. Suzuki and Happ sub 4K gives you some upside. Swanson's only 4,200. So there is some favorable pricing on the Cubs, but probably not either team, full stacking too much.
All right. How would you rank the 4 sides?
Bybee, Stroman, Cubs, Cleveland.
I'm trying to figure out what EQ means. Is Strickland is a super lock?
MMA.
MMA. Okay. It's like I don't see the Strickland. All right.
Yeah. I don't know who he's fighting. Just hopefully he has a better game plan than he did against Pereira, where he just decided to get kicked in the face.
It's not the best game plan.
No.
All right. Next up, we have Los Angeles at Kansas City. Julio Urias on the mound for the Dodgers. Daniel Lynch for the Royals. Any interest in the pitchers, Adam?
I don't. My model probably will because it just loves KC pitching, but not interested in Lynch. I mean, brutal matchup at 6,300 against the Dodgers. Definitely interested in Urias, 9,500. Good matchup against KC, good park. We have him getting 21% ownership, but with a 29% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher. The ownership gap between him and Tyler Glasnow is really big and warranted based on how good Glasnow is. The gap between him and Kirby is pretty interesting to me, given that Kirby is facing one of the best offenses in baseball, and he's getting more than double the ownership. I don't expect Urias to go super deep into this game. He hasn't made a major league start in like a month and a half. He threw 60 pitches in his most recent rehab start. So that's the reason you see the gap in ownership. We probably will see our top 2 pitcher percentage come down because it doesn't really make a ton of sense to have what is probably 75 pitches from Urias be that likely to be a top 2 scoring pitcher. But with it being a short slate and being a good matchup, there is still a decent chance that 75, 80 pitches from him, 5 innings, whatever it may be, still ends up being somewhat useful.
Yeah. Matthew says this UFC card is wildly unappealing and Strickland is not a lock but should win. I haven't even looked at how many fights are on this slate.
I know there's 12 fights based on when I registered yesterday. Other than that, I have no idea who's even fighting.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. All right. Any interest in the bats in this Kansas City game?
The Dodgers for sure. Solid matchup against Lynch. Not a great park, but it's the Dodgers. 201 expected ISO to righties so far this year. Going back to last year, it's 182. Mookie's going to look great. Smith, JD, the lefties can hit lefties. Freeman and Muncy, both very, very good against left-handed pitching. And then you get some value at the bottom of the order. Vargas is cheap. I assume DeLuca will be in the lineup. He's cheap. So yeah, the Dodgers look great. Right now we have them second in top stack percentage behind the Tigers. We have them getting less ownership. So we have them as the 4th highest owned team, 2nd highest top stack percentage, 2nd in stack score. They look very good.
How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Dodgers 1, Urias 2, Kansas City 3, Lynch 4.
All right. I think I've done all of the reads that I was set up to do. So I'm just going to do an ad hoc one. I'm going to tell you guys, check out our fantasy football channel if you haven't already. We're trying to revive it, trying to bring it back this summer, doing a lot of both season long and and best ball related content. As I said, we looked at the weekly winners contest that I showed you earlier. I already did a like 15-minute breakdown of what I think is the best strategy for that contest, and we're going to do regularly, putting up like best picks in certain rounds. It's going to be a lot of content related to best ball, and I think it's good content. Myself, Lofty, and Gajeski primarily. I'm sure we'll get others on there as well. So check it out if you haven't already. The YouTube, it'll be Stochastic Fantasy Football, I think is the name of the channel. But it's you should check it out because we are doing a lot of content there now, and I think it's going to be good content. All right. Next up, we have Tampa at Seattle. Tyler Glasnow on the mound for the Rays. George Kirby for the Mariners. Any interest in these pitchers?
Yeah, both of them for sure. Obviously, this game didn't live up to the pitchers' duel that we were kind of expecting yesterday between Miller and McClanahan. But you have Tyler Glasnow going today, who has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 35%. Good strikeout matchup in the best pitchers park in baseball. Seattle against right-handed pitching this year, 25% K percentage, 99 WRC plus. Glasnow looks very good. We have him first in top 2 pitcher percentage at 40%. We have him getting 56% projected ownership. No real problems with any of that. He, in his most recent start, threw 89 pitches. They've been somewhat cautious with him. He does have a very lengthy injury history. You may not see him go more than 5 innings. He hasn't made it through 6 since June 9th, but he did go 5 1/3 on the 14th. So they tried to let him go 6. He just didn't get there. But the strikeout upside is so good anyway. Getting 5 or 6 innings from him certainly looks very, very good. On the other side, George Kirby is a very good pitcher as well. Does have a difficult matchup against Tampa. Not a very easy team to strike out. And they have the highest WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year. But it is a limited slate. It is only a $9,200 price tag on Kirby. It is a very good pitcher's park, lowest park factor over the last 3 years. And the Rays do only have a 3.6 implied run total. So everything points toward rostering a lot of George Kirby. It's just, obviously you'd feel better if you were facing not the Rays.
This is a 7 run implied total for the game. Are you playing either of these offenses?
Probably not, but it is a short slate. I think you go to the Tampa side first, just based on how good they are.
All right. How would you rank the 4 sides?
Glasnow, Kirby, Tampa, Mariners.
Ooh, I don't know if this is true. Andrew Jennison says, and I believe him, he's in the chat pretty often. Lillard just requested a trade. Looks like probably Miami. Where are you seeing that, Andrew? That's
Chris Haynes reported it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, that's a change for Lillard. He's always been like, oh yeah, I'm going to stay here in Portland. Like he's always been like,
well, that's the thing. I don't know if Dame said that.
Like, oh, right.
Chris Haynes could very easily just be making shit up.
Okay. All right. I guess I don't know much about Chris Haynes.
Like it's definitely been reported before, like in previous years, that Dame requested a trade just for Dame to be like,
no, I didn't. Yeah, that is true. I remember that happening. Interesting. Oh, he says Miami is his own speculation. Okay. All right. I hope it's not Miami as a Jimmy Butler hater. I feel like Dame is going to put them over the top.
Miami did open up. So Vincent walked. They traded Strus and they traded Oladipo.
Do they still have Lowry?
So I don't remember exactly. They have Lowry, but they essentially said we don't plan on having him by the start of next season. If things go the way we want them to, we won't have him. But if they don't, then we will.
Our guy Mike Lawrence says, I'd love him in Philly. Yeah, no shit, Mike. I'd love him on the Timberwolves too. Is there any team that would not love to add Damian Lillard? Right. I mean, there are some that have great point guards already that don't need him, but like.
And BZ said Chris Haynes is pretty much his mouthpiece. And I did remember there was a link between them. I couldn't remember if it was Haynes.
Good or bad.
Haynes knows him or the opposite, but yeah.
Yeah. But Mike, thank you for posting. Mike did post that Fantasy Football channel into chat. Appreciate that, Mike. Justin Sports asks, would we say MMA is the most likely DFS sport to win taking a dart in the lottos?
Probably
maybe
not.
It
kind of depends what you mean. Like, are you saying like just blindly clicking names, or like blindly clicking names? Probably just because like everybody's fighting.
As long as you use close to the salary cap. like blindly clicking names,
Right.
and not having fighters against each other.
Right. Yeah, but like there's so much. It's probably either that or baseball. Like there's just so much variance.
Yeah. Jobin says NFL. I could see, and you could definitely make a case for NFL as well, I think. But yeah, I guess it's a tough question. But we do have 2 more games to get through on the slate, including this Coors game. We've got Detroit at Colorado. Tyler Alexander on the mound for the Tigers. Jeff Criswell, who I got to be honest, I've never heard of him before, on the mound for the Rockies. You playing any pitchers in Coors today, Adam?
No, it worked out yesterday. Gomber went nuts, but not chasing that.
How about the bats?
Yeah, the bats are going to look good. Obviously, the offenses are both not very good, but they're in cores. They're facing not good pitching. I'm actually seeing totally different pitchers.
Oh, you're seeing not those 2?
I'm seeing Logue and Block, but DraftKings has Logue and Criswell. Regardless, there's bad pitchers pitching. We'll get it confirmed. Right. Who's
okay.
Pitching. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's a Coors game. You have cheap offenses. Somehow Matt Vierling's price went down since yesterday. So did Torkelson's. The Tigers got cheaper since yesterday. I don't know how that happens. There is one player in the projected lineup on DraftKings above 4K, and that is Baez at 4,600. This team is absolutely free. 21% chance of being the top stack, 17% projected ownership, 30% chance of being the top value stack. Now, the negative that I talked about with them yesterday still applies today, where runs aren't all created equal. And like, if you tell me the Tigers score 7 runs and you tell me the Dodgers score 7 runs, I assume you're getting multiple home runs from the Dodgers, and you're probably getting a bunch of like singles and doubles from the Tigers. So From a value standpoint, they still look really, really, really good. From a tournament standpoint, just because of the way that they are, you could very easily have them score a bunch of runs and then still not be the team that you have to have in tournaments because they just have a bunch of dudes with 12, 14, 15 points. But the value component is certainly there. So, whether you're 5-minute stacking, using them as mini stacks, they are going to look like good plays. But it's almost like they're stronger. They're good plays in tournaments, but it's much more difficult to get away from them in like cash games where you're more interested in that median outcome than tournaments because they don't have a lot of power. So like the chances, they're still as unlikely as basically any team, even being in cores, to have like 4 guys in the lineup hit home runs.
Okay. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Tigers, Rockies.
Arnold says Lillard listed Miami and Brooklyn as the most appealing teams to him. Interesting. Brooklyn is like kind of, it doesn't seem like Brooklyn is the right spot for somebody who's trying to like win a championship.
I actually really like it.
I mean, Mikal Bridges, I think, is really good.
They have like every good wing in the league on that roster.
Who else do they? I mean, who else do you really like?
Bridges. There? They just re-signed Cam Johnson.
That's right.
I don't remember who they have, but they got a million wings last year.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I suppose if you add Dame to that team, that's could be a contender.
You have Claxton as a rim protector.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that is true. All right.
Like that team can just if you add the right pieces, that team can just very quickly be good.
Right. But who would Brooklyn have to trade for Dame? Would it just be like? I
assume they have picks. I'm not sure. Or their wings. Like,
I mean, they just traded Durant, so like they must have got. I think they got picks in that deal along with all those players.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't know what they have. Josh would absolutely know all of this, but
yeah,
assuming they have the pieces to get him, I actually probably like him more on Brooklyn.
Yeah. Interesting. I'd love him on the Timberwolves. All right. Final game of this slate. We have Arizona. I assume
that's why the Wizards moved Monte Morris yesterday, was to open.
To make space for Dame. Yeah. Arizona at Los Angeles. Ryan Nelson on the mound for the D-backs. Tyler Anderson for the Angels. Any interest in the pitchers?
Not particularly. Short slate, so obviously maybe you get to them a little bit, especially since you're probably writing off the ones in cores. But Anderson pulling 19% ownership at 7K. Tough matchup with Arizona. I'm assuming you're not going to have Corbin Carroll here, but still not an easy matchup. It's just a 7K price tag. He's essentially the best of the cheap pitchers. Every other pitcher that you're playing is 8,400 or more. So he's getting 19% ownership. Ryan Nelson, 6,100, only getting 6%. He throws hard, so he has that, but doesn't translate to strikeouts. 16% K percentage, 4.99 xFIP. If you want to play him at low ownership because he's cheap and low owned and hope to get lucky, sure. We just saw Tommy Henry put up like 27 DraftKings points yesterday. It can happen, but really tough spot for him and not a very good pitcher.
All right. Interesting. S&P says that they have all the Suns picks, which are super valuable because Phoenix is screwed going forward. How are they like after this year? They're all the
After
contract expires?
yeah.
Okay. So like, yeah, future picks are valuable. Interesting.
Yeah. That's why I ended up liking the Beal trade for Washington a lot too, because they got pick swaps with Phoenix like every other year through 2030, and that team's going to be really bad eventually.
Steven, I'm gonna have to time Steven out here. He said send Dame to Minnesota so he can fail there with the rest of them. No, Minnesota is gonna be great going forward. You don't know what you're talking about, Steven. All right. What do you think of the bats in this LA game?
They look pretty good. Neither pitcher is great. Both offenses have plenty of upside. Tyler Anderson so far this year against righties, 143 expected ISO, sub 100 to lefties. Again, this is why you're seeing more ownership come into him than Nelson. He does do a pretty good job limiting power. That's the start of last season rather, but similar numbers this year. 171 expected ISO to righties is a little bit higher. So the Diamondbacks look fine. It's a good hitter's park. They do still have a lot of talent, even if Carroll's not in the lineup. But the Angel side's going to look better. 249 expected ISO to lefties for Nelson, 144 to righties. Another fantastic Shohei Ohtani spot, but Mickey Moniak's going to look good. Moustakas looks fine. Matt Thaiss, assuming he's in the lineup, looks good. Nelson has been better at limiting power to righties, but that doesn't mean not to play Trout, Drury, Renfroe. You have a cheap Anthony Rendon back. Not the best power hitter anymore, but he's cheap and in the middle of that lineup. So even though Nelson has been legitimately good against righties, 292 expected WOBA, 19% K percentage, with the park and the power that the Angels have, those righties still look fine, but it's the lefties that really stand out, Moniak and Ohtani in particular.
Okay. How would you rank the four sides of the game?
Angels, Diamondbacks, Anderson, Nelson.
Nick Osteros says Nas Reed. Are you familiar with the Nas Reed, Jaden McDaniels? Why people just say Nas Reed?
No.
Oh, that's just a story came out. Nas Reed said that every time he sees Jaden McDaniels, that's how Jaden McDaniels greets him. He just looks at him and says Nas Reed, and just like that's like his greeting to Nas Reed, and that's become a Timberwolves thing. Like at the games, whenever he scores him, they just put big Nas Reed period on the screen. It's just like a running bit that apparently Jaden McDaniels started. All right. We made it to the end of the main slate. Adam, who are your three favorite stacks on this slate?
Tigers, Rockies, Dodgers.
Three favorite pitchers.
Glasnow, Kirby, Bybee, but man, it feels gross saying a pitcher against Tampa.
Yeah. Home run pick outside of course.
Ohtani
is number one in the top batter school today, 33% of hitting a home run.
I would have gone Ohtani over anybody in course.
Yeah, I mean, he is over anybody in course. So yeah. I will go with, Trout is number two on the board with a 31.5% chance of hitting a home run. So seems like the natural next place to go. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else. No, I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to go with Trout. You go Ohtani. I'm going Trout as our home run picks. All right. We have made it to the end of the show. I don't think we had anything else we needed to say. Oh, S&P. Don't bring up Jaden breaking. I love Jaden McDaniels. Don't bring up his breaking his hand. Adam, any fun plans this weekend? Any final thoughts for the show?
No, hanging out with my mom. Her birthday's July 4th, so just
nice.
Hanging out there for the weekend. I'll probably go down on our actual birthday too, but going to see my sister's new house and do her birthday stuff tomorrow. So
cool.
Yeah, family stuff this weekend should be a blast.
Yeah. I can't tell if you're being sarcastic. The way you said that sounded sarcastic.
Both. Like it's not
right.
If you ask me like what I'm doing for fun on the weekend, it's seeing my family is normally at the top of the list, but it will be nice to see them.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. All right. Thank you guys very much for watching. Again, if you have not yet hit the like button, please do hit the like button. Helps us out a lot. And good luck today.